Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to explain to you some observations that I did for schools that had that were general education classrooms and special ed classrooms. For my kindergarten observation, I observed Miss Ponder's class at Lone Oak Primary School. Miss Ponder was very welcoming. As soon as I entered the room, the students were sitting at their desks and they were coloring. And I noticed that they were talking with calm, whispering voices. The room had the blinds shut and the lights were on. One of the things that I really liked in her classroom was the behavior chart. I always like to see that teachers are still keeping up with students' behavior and enforcing it. One of the desks was right next to the teacher's desk that I noticed, and then another student's desk was at the very back of the room. Miss Ponder mentioned to me that the student that was sitting right next to her desk had a hard time focusing on her work and getting anything done, and she was very distracted very easily. She explained to me that the student that sat at the back of the room was very bright, but he had a hard time not talking. Another thing that I liked in Miss Ponder's classroom was they tended to answer her with "yes, ma'am." She gave the students a choice of 3 centers they could go to and work with groups. I like that she gave them choices instead of making them go with different classmates that they might not enjoy being around, seeing that it's only kindergarten. She showed me some of the students' handwriting while she was giving a private spelling test for students that had missed the previous week. And she positively bragged about how well all of her students' writing was. For my first grade observation, I observed Miss Burrell's class at Lone Oak Primary School. When I walked in, I noticed that the room was very dark, but she had it lit up with several lamps in every corner of the room. And the students had a visual of a fish that was hung up on the board. They were given materials such as colors, cutouts. They were given half a plate and scissors. And they were instructed to do a fish that looks similar to the one on the board with their own creativeness. As the teacher was doing testing with one of the students in the back of the room, one student was seated alone at the front of the room and he was facing the board. He kept leaning back in his chair and he wasn't getting any work done, and he fell back several times and almost hurt his leg. But the teacher was so busy focusing on the student she was testing that she had no clue what the boy was doing. The students were very loud and they got instructed to no talking time, and that didn't last very long, and they went to being loud all over again. The classroom environment was very welcoming and in a relaxed way, but it was also kind of cluttered. This teacher, she seemed kind of burnt out from the school year, and she didn't seem to care anymore, even though she still tried to keep some structure with her students. I wish that the teacher would have put more effort with her students, even though the school year was ending. For my second grade observation, I observed Miss Wagner's class at Lone Oak Primary School. As I entered the room, she greeted me, and she informed me that they weren't doing much because it was the end of the school year and all the teachers were trying to catch up on paperwork. So the students were watching a video on the smartboard, and they were eating snacks and drinks that were provided by the teacher. I noticed that a student that had her desk placed at the very back of the room by the teacher's desk, and I heard the student mention, "I don't want to watch this show." And so the teacher was allowing her to work with letter stencils and trace them at her desk. I noticed a few students had their jackets covering their arms and their legs, and the air was blowing full blast in that room. I was even cold. The teacher hadn't even noticed that all her students were called because she was too busy paying attention to getting all of her paperwork done for the end of the school year. I wish she could have planned something a little more involved with the students for me to observe, instead of me watching a class watch a video the whole time. And it was a long time for the students to sit still while doing nothing. For my inclusion classroom, I did it at Lone Oak Exceptional in Cabot, and the students were independently taking turns on the computer spelling out their name and typing what school they go to or went to and their address. I noticed the environment. They had comfy chairs, they had rocking chairs. One student was sitting in a beanbag, one was in a wheelchair, and then some other chairs had tennis balls at the bottom of the chairs to help them scoot better. These students were always happy. They always had a smile on their face, and they laughed at silly jokes that their classmates would tell. And the teachers worked really well with staying on their level. For my 6th grade observation, I went to Lonoke Exceptional School in Cabot. Then the students were separated into 2 rooms, and there was a large round table that was covered with art supplies, and they had aprons, paint colors, paper, and paper towels. And the teacher explained to the students that they were going to make a birdhouse, so they were ecstatic about that. She explained to me that she had the students paint a sheet of paper the day before, so it was dry now. Then the period changed, and the students moved to the classroom next door, what they call the computer room. And the teacher pulled up a video on the computer about bullying. She asked her students, what do you do if somebody's being bullied? And she stated, you tell someone. She then asked another question, what is bullying on the computer? One of her students shouted out, cyberbullying, and the teacher was very surprised to see that one of her students actually knew what that was. And then they moved to the topic of science, and they mentioned that they had a greenhouse behind the school building. And then she asked them what they had growing in their greenhouse. And then she asked them some things, if they had a garden at home or a family member that had a garden at home, what they grow in their garden. The students, they obviously were reviewing this because they knew the answers right away. So it was impressive to see that they knew all this information about plants and retained it so well. The environment in this class seemed relaxed and scheduled according to accommodate to the needs of their students. Another observation I did fell under 4th grade criteria, and this was at Pathfinder Autism Academy. Some students, they were going over math, and so they had play money and they were counting coins. And then after they got done with that, they did some counting numbers. One young boy had the teacher write a time on the whiteboard, and then he had to show the time on his clock when they went over time. When students were finished with their work, the class rule was that they were allowed to do puzzles. Well, one girl, she always finished early, and she was always doing puzzles. Another girl, I noticed that she had a chair for the bottom of her chair to sit on, but the back of her chair was a normal back of a chair. She sat all day and bounced to keep her focus. The teacher mentioned a stretch break, which the children enjoyed, because this eventually led to singing the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. This got them stretching and their mind going, thinking of what they're going to do next. My third grade observation I did at Pathfinder Autism Academy in Jacksonville, and there was a speech therapist in there. She mentioned that one student had to spell his words out on a talker, and the talker was an iPad that had an app where he could click on words of what he wanted to say. She mentioned that he had trouble with who and where, and he was getting them confused, and he had been focusing on WH words. And how he communicates with his therapist is she asks him who or where, and she will find it on the iPad to tell her the answer. One student randomly reaches out their hand, another student randomly yells. One student enjoys clapping, and another student bounced on the ball, part of the chair, all day long to keep her focus. I wish that I was able to stay longer to see the rest of their day planned at the Autism Academy. I've learned that autism children are so different, and they grow in their own each individual way, and they are an inspiration to watch, to learn, and to grow from.